host, Jonathan Elliott, and today I'll be joined by some of the most influential executive founders and business owners in the STEM space for a pivotal discussion that will address major inequities faced by the Black community in education. Now, the mission here at Ebony is to provide insight that will help educate our audiences on the inequity crisis and empower them with available resources to build towards success. So let's get into it. I have three lovely ladies. Thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's good to be here.
Good. It feels good to be here. And I want to introduce you all. We have Kimberly Bryant, founder of Black Girls Code, and Aisha Bowe, former NASA rocket scientist and founder, CEO of STEM Board and Lingo. And last but not least, we have Dina Pierrot, founder and executive director of Urban Teen. Now, I know all three of you have an amazing story to tell, and I'm sure everybody wants to know. I want to know about the defining moment or experience that caused you to begin your work as an educator in the STEM space.
I never thought I would be here. After barely graduating from high school, I found myself in community college, and I did not see engineers around me. I didn't really know anyone. And then I ran into a female engineer who worked at Ford Motor Company. And she encouraged me to pursue math. And she said to me, I don't think you met somebody who has taught you in a way where you could learn. And that beginning totally transformed my life. I went from pre-algebra to graduating with 2 degrees in aerospace engineering from the University of Michigan and spending 6 years working for NASA as a rocket scientist. And through my transformation, I really wanted to make sure that I spent the rest of my life helping people understand the power of obtaining a STEM education and to help them to live their best life.
For me, I was a commissioner here in the state of Washington on the Governor's Commission on African American Affairs, and all of our ethnic commissions were looking at the opportunity gap issue, for youth of color, especially for boys. And I always wanted to figure out how can I put a dent in this. So started working in my community on different things, making sure kids knew about the Running Start program. But then I got asked to participate on a Chief Information Officer Council in Portland, Oregon. And when I went to the very first meeting, I walked in and it was a room of about 200 or so white men. That was it. I was it for diversity. As soon as I sat down, I started thinking about these youth over here who were being marginalized, disenfranchising, no clear pathway for success. But then I started thinking about all of what's available in this room. This is where opportunities lie. So 6 months later, I launched Urban Teen to try to bridge that divide.
I really do consider myself an accidental social entrepreneur. So before I started Black Girls Code, I actually had spent almost 25 years in industry as an engineering professional. I got my degree in electrical engineering with a minor in computer science back in the mid 80s and went on to work at various companies, chemical manufacturing. I worked in consumer products manufacturing. Then I worked in the pharmaceutical industry and then biotech. And so I was working in this career path as an engineer, as a technically trained Black woman, and finding myself, as Dina said, in rooms that did not have other people that looked like me. And so back in 2011, as my daughter was really starting to, I think we'll say, find her passion, if you will, and seeing her passion align with mine as a technical person in STEM career, but also really focus on technology. It came to my attention as I was introducing her to opportunities to learn these coding skills that she was the only little Black girl in these rooms. You would think even 10 years ago that this would be the place where there was a progressive level of thought and also access to opportunity. And I was very shocked to find that that was not the case. And that wasn't okay with me. I did not want my daughter to experience that same type of isolation and marginalization that I had experienced within my career. So over the last 10 plus years, that's where the organization's focus has been, and really educating over 30,000 girls with 15 chapters to change that pipeline and really show the world that Black girls can code and do so many more things.
What are some of the instances of challenges you experienced on your journey, and how did you overcome them?
The biggest challenge that we had was really getting support for the work. And when we look at the statistics, we'll see that in charitable giving and philanthropy, Black and Latinx-led companies only receive about 4% of philanthropic dollars. But if you look at organizations that are run by Black women that look like the three of us, that drops down to about 6.6%, not 6%, 0.6% of philanthropic dollars go to organizations led by Black or Latinx women. And that's a problem because there's no lack of need for the work we do, but it's been very difficult for us to break through that veil in getting enough support to do the work in our communities. And I think that's the biggest thing that is slowly starting to change, especially since around 2020 when we kind of had that summer of reckoning, but there's still so much work that needs to be done in that area to really create an equitable opportunity for organizations like us to do the work that we need to do.
For me, it was 9 years of no funding for iUrban Teen. And we don't have an intentional reach to girls. We have an intentional reach to boys. And I remember someone telling me, oh God, years ago, you need to change your focus from boys to girls because there's no money in Black boys. That bothered me. And I am so headstrong and determined. I said, no, we will always have that intentional reach. And so it took a long time to get support and funding. And it was that summer of reckoning that Kimberly was talking about that we were finally noticed. But you think about all those years. And so I pretty much funded a lot of the organization on my own. I still feel that there is a barrier for us versus even men of color in these spaces that we are. And I will be glad when that day comes, when the girls in our programs, when my granddaughters don't have to feel that or address that.
When I went to architect my organization, I decided deliberately to not start a nonprofit. I wanted to start a for-profit to generate revenue because I felt like if I made the money, no one could tell me how to spend it. That's why I did not have investors. I decided deliberately to create a revenue pipeline where I could, over the span of 10 years, because I've owned my tech company for 10 years, invest in the causes that were near and dear to my heart.
Dina, I would love to hear, what is it about our current people policies and practices that help contribute to this inequity?
It's a puzzle with so many missing parts to it. We have been so broken for so many decades that even trying to figure out what pieces do we put in place first to make this happen, to make changes happen. Look at what happened to critical race theory. Look at how that frightened so many people across the country just by the thought of hearing the truth about our history in the United States and America. That fear begets something else that begets something else that still stifles us to this day. So you have so many school districts and so many states still fighting over critical race theory where our kids are still suffering and falling through the cracks. They should incorporate in different metrics on how they are working with the community. They need to have outreach teams that look like the community, that are going to the community, not waiting for the community to come to them, but going to the communities and involving them in learning cohorts on how do we partner with you? How do we do what's best for your families, for your children? I don't see too many schools doing that intentional outreach and inclusionary practices. I don't see too many schools that are really investing in trauma-informed care or social emotional learning, or those kind of things. I don't see a lot of them really taking those deep dives into that space. Some are, but most of them are not. We have a long way to go, but I think that we as parents and community members need to also make our voices heard in showing up in these spaces.
Could you tell us about some of the programs that you worked on or even created to solve these issues? And have you seen any changes stemming from the work that you've begun?
We've learned a lot about what it takes to educate Black girls and teach Black girls not just these STEM skills, but also these skills of self-confidence and self-efficacy. So I think one of the things that became very clear to us throughout the years of the program is that we initially came to this as we're trying to solve this pipeline problem. We're trying to move the needle and increase the number of women from 3% to 10% or plus build equity in terms of the number of Black women receiving computer science degrees. And that takes us doing more than just teaching these girls how to write a line of code. That requires us to teach them to create community within themselves. So it's not just enough to give our girls and boys, to Dina's point, these skills in coding. We have to teach them to be fully actualized human beings that are changing generations and generations beyond us.
Aisha, according to studies, Black students were 54% less likely than white students to be recommended for gifted education programs. So I want to know, could you please talk to us about some of the obvious and not so obvious ways the lack of access to STEM and other accelerated educational programs can affect the trajectory for the young Black generation?
Lack of access to STEM programs in some instances can exclude our students from being able to get into and compete at prestigious institutions, from being selected for job opportunities that could change the course of the lifestyle that their family and their family members lead. I mean, STEM skills are critical. What I'm enjoying about the evolution of our economy is the idea that you can receive these skills at home. And a lot of times, these skills can allow you to generate revenue that may allow you to pay for a degree, or that may allow you to become gainfully employed without obtaining a degree. And so I'm extremely excited by what Kimberly and Dina have been doing, because what we're saying is, hey, we can give you skills that you can use now. It does not have to come to you in a school system. It does not have to come to you as part of college. And if you learn them, if you practice them at home, you can not only become gainfully employed, but you can provide a living for yourself where you can choose what path you will follow.
Who is at the table when discussions are made about our school systems, and who do you feel like should be at the table who are not currently?
There are very few folks that look like us at these tables, either in school district meetings or industry meetings, where these conversations about access to STEM tools and STEM learning are discussed. Even 10 years, past the time that I founded my original nonprofit, I still find that to be the case, that I'm often the only Black woman that's a leader in the space in these rooms. And I often find that if we are not in these rooms, there's no one that is advocating for our young people and their needs. And we're often seeing our kids from marginalized communities, really, I want to say, forced into this deficit-based model rather than an asset-based model that takes into account all the skill sets that they already possess, so that we're not trying to force them to change who they fundamentally are. We're just enhancing the skill sets that they inherently have and teaching them in a way that they can excel and blossom even further.
As an educator, how does one help teachers and administrators understand issues of bias and systems of oppression contributing to this crisis?
Understanding trauma-informed care and what traumas that those students may be enduring at home or with friends, and they're bringing that into the classroom where you might be instilling even more trauma, right? They need to know about social emotional learning. There's a lot to put on teachers, I know that, but even if they just tweak a little bit and make sure that those students feel included and feel valued. A lot of times when we have our events, at the end of the day, we ask all of them, what did we do right by you and where did we miss the mark? When I hear a student, especially one of our Black male students, say, I felt valued, I know that they meant it. And that's when I know I hit the mark. So I feel that students just want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to feel valued. It doesn't take much to make that happen.
How can schools better serve and empower Black students to pursue careers in the STEM space?
I really think that there have to be other factors that we use to evaluate a student. What is their home life like? Are they getting adequate meals? Are they being supported in their learning environment? And do they have learning styles that maybe differ from the way they're being taught in school? All those things are a factor when we look at how to improve the environment within which our students can potentially excel.
What are some emerging and in-demand skills set to focus on when educating students?
I think we are at a renaissance of the next wave of where technology and innovation is going. And this is an unprecedented opportunity for us to get on the bus first and not last, and be able to create what this industry will look like for many, many years forward. Really being able to tap in and look a little bit further than just crypto, but look at the blockchain and decentralized technology at its deepest level and learn the skill sets that are needed to create the future with those tools.
Look at public speaking, right? Developing that art and that skill set in speaking, in creative and technical writing, some of those skill sets. They also think about inclusive product design, think about program management. So those kind of core skills and life skills that you need, besides the other high tech type of roles.
Where can parents and educators find resources to help our children and make effective changes within their local community?
Work with other parent groups on social media, Facebook, Instagram. There's so many parent groups. Learn from each other on what's out there for your child. I would say the other thing, the resources too, to find out about advocating, they need to know how to advocate for themselves, in life, because once they grow up and they start working in these environments where they are one of only a few, they need to understand how to self-advocate for themselves. Some states will have, in the Office of Superintendent, they will have a student ombudsman's person or office. That office is there to help advocate with parents for their child in school. So if you're a parent, you're having an issue, you feel like the school's not listening to you, they're trying to ignore you, trying to push you out, you contact that ombudsman's office and they will support you in that effort because they're looking at the student first, not the school district. So that's a resource. Join your PTA. I was the only mom of color or person of color, because men can be on there too, but I was the only person of color on that PTA. And I know how proud my son was to see me on there, but PTAs are powerful. That's where some of the change can even start happening.
My advice to folks would be to get involved. If it's not starting a nonprofit, if it's not that, starting a for-profit company, as Aisha did, or getting involved in youth organizations at your school or communities, but just move and help move the needle forward and find ways to really create change in our communities that will outlast us for generations and generations to come.
I thank you three so much. You three are leaders, literally leaders that, are addressing the major inequities faced by the Black community. And it starts, like you said, it starts with us. So I'm very much so hoping that everybody that watches this takes the gems that you guys have bestowed on them and actually goes out there and makes a difference like you are. So I thank you so much for that.
Thank you. This was great.
Yes, this was. All right. Well, hope you guys enjoyed. This is Ebony Magazine, and go out there and make a change.